The defense is calling on the judge in the Kyle Rittenhouse case to declare a mistrial. Rittenhouse's lawyers took issue with the prosecutor questioning him about his silence following the arrest, arguing Rittenhouse was protected under the Fifth Amendment. And they also said the prosecutor was acting in, quote, bad faith. So Nancy Chen is with me now from the courthouse in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Thank you so much for joining us. Nancy, I know that I was caught off guard twice while watching the testimony yesterday. First by Rittenhouse and the level of emotion he displayed, and then later on how sort of businesslike he was in terms of his testimony, but then also how angry the judge got at the prosecution several times. So let's talk about this. What more can you tell us about the defense's request for a mistrial?
And to that point, by the way, good morning to you, Anne Marie. Absolutely. It was a very riveting day in court yesterday. Plenty of emotional moments throughout the day as Rittenhouse took the stand for the first time. And as you talk about this request for a mistrial, of course, not just a request for a mistrial, but a mistrial with prejudice. The defense making that request based on the prosecution's line of questioning of Rittenhouse. Now, the judge still has yet to make a decision on that request from the defense. But if that is granted, this trial would be over and Rittenhouse could not be charged again in this state.
So the other shocking thing was the fact that Rittenhouse testified at all, because it's very infrequent that you see someone who's facing murder charges testify in their own defense. How did the jury react to Rittenhouse's testimony?
This was a moment that a lot of us weren't sure necessarily if he would testify or not. There was a lot of questioning whether or not the defense would call Rittenhouse to the stand. As you mentioned, this could be, many legal experts say, a risky decision when the defense does call the person at the center of all of this. But certainly an emotional testimony, and jurors were paid attention to all this. They reacted to that emotion. They were very attentive, many taking notes, enraptured by what they were seeing. Jurors appeared to show sympathy as well. They also did hear Rittenhouse's mother sobbing in the courtroom gallery.
Yeah. So I do want to play some sound from the judge in the trial, because as I mentioned, he yelled at the prosecution a few times. So let's listen to some of that.
I was astonished when you began your examination by commenting on the defendant's post-arrest silence. That's basic law. It's been basic law in this country for 40 years, 50 years. I have no idea why you would do something like that. And it gives, well, I'll leave it at that. So I don't know what you're up to.
Okay, so he was upset about a few things. The first time I saw him sort of reprimand the prosecution, it had to do with this idea of Kyle Rittenhouse choosing not to speak after the shooting, but then speaking on the stand. And this idea of, that his silence should not be any indication of his guilt. And then the prosecution also attempted to, I think, introduce some photos that the judge did not think should be introduced as evidence. I'm wondering if the way the judge is handling the case is influencing the trial in any way. I don't think, and you can correct me, I don't think the jury was around for any of this stuff.
No, and the judge did have the jury leave the room for much of this. So as much as I understand, they did not hear this exchange between him and the prosecution. And yes, one of those instances was related to the prosecution seeming to comment on Rittenhouse's silence since this shooting and not speaking out. Also, the prosecution, though, did refer to some media interviews that Rittenhouse has given. And so that, I think, was what opened the door in that instance. The second instance is where the prosecution, it seemed to be approaching on bringing up something that happened a few weeks before the shooting, and it was ruled, the judge said in pretrial hearings, that they would not go into this, and it seemed to be encroaching on that territory, which is what prompted that very loud outburst. Of course, the judge, a central figure in his courtroom, making those calls, and you certainly see it playing out like that.
And so the trial continues. What's next?
The defense is expected to call 3 more witnesses, and that'll happen through the end of this week. And if this trial does go on, if the judge does not grant the defense's request for a mistrial with prejudice, the jury would likely get this case Monday or Tuesday of next week.
Okay, Nancy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So CBSN Chicago is live streaming the Kyle Rittenhouse trial every day. You can watch their coverage by downloading the free CBS News app or heading on over to cbsnews.com/live. There you can find all of our CBSN local streams.